Is it working? Hi, everyone. I'm Shelby, and this is Katie, and we're going to be talking to you about Kotlin today. So actually, these past few days, we've been talking about Kotlin so much that Katie lost her voice. So I'm going to be doing more of the talking today, but we'll get started. So a little bit about us. We're both software engineers at Intuit, and we've both been on multiple teams for the past few years. Katie used to work on the Android TurboTax mobile team, and now she's working on the server-side team for TurboTax, and I'm currently on an internal tools team. So we basically build internal products to make sure that all of our external products get released with the highest quality possible. So we know what you must be thinking. Kotlin's just another language, but we thought that too, but then our lives were changed. So today's presentation will be successful if your life is changed by Kotlin and you learn key techniques to introduce change to your company or team. We're going to do that by showing you how we did that to Intuit, which is a 30-year-old, 9,000-person company. So before we jump into how it's going to change your life, we figured we'd let you know what the language is. Quick show of hands, how many people have coded in Kotlin before? Okay, so Kotlin is a statically typed language developed by the engineers at JetBrains, so the same people who make your IDE, Android Studio, and IntelliJ. It runs on the JVM, so you can use it alongside your Java code. And it's inspired by a lot of existing languages that most of you probably have used before, like Go, Swift, Java, Python, and more. And it's really easy to pick up, especially if you know any of those existing languages. So it actually started in 2011 and was open sourced in 2012. And the first stable release was in 2016. And a big pivotal moment was in 2017 when Google announced its official support for Kotlin on Android. 2018, 1.3 was released, which had a lot of really awesome features like coroutines, Kotlin native, multi-platform, and more. And then 2019 today, a lot of companies are actually using Kotlin in production. So you've heard what Kotlin is and some history about it. So why are we talking about functional programming? We actually found that Kotlin was a really great way to teach functional programming. And some key aspects of functional programming that Kotlin teaches well are treating your code like a mathematical equation. So every function has one input and one output. You can compose smaller functions into larger functions, avoiding shared state, mutable data, and side effects, and then also multi-threaded support.
So these are the 8 key techniques we're going to walk you through on how to influence change on your team or at your company. So the first step is to find your passion. You want to find something you're really excited about, something you can talk about forever and you're really, really pumped about. So for us, that was Kotlin. Kotlin really solved for all of the biggest pitfalls of Java, and when we started coding in the language, we just fell in love with it, and we couldn't stop programming in it and talking about it. So it really solved for having concise code, being safe, interoperable with Java, and also tool-friendly.
So after you figure out what you're passionate about, you're going to want to try and socialize the idea with your team and other engineers you work with. So what was my experience like? As I said before, I work on an internal tools team right now, and this is actually a really great place to try out new technology. So I started with a proof of concept by coding a feature that I was supposed to develop that sprint in Java, and I did it in Kotlin. So that was something I did on my own to try and prove to my team that we should use it. And then I wanted to get the entire team involved. So we converted all of our Java data classes to Kotlin data classes, which we'll go over why that's a great place to start. In addition, along the way, we created learning resources as a team. So any problems someone ran into, we documented, and it allowed members of the team to feel empowered to be an expert in one part of the language.
It's crazy that your experience was like that because I was on the Android team at the time, And surprisingly, some of the engineers were a little bit more hesitant on using Kotlin. They'd used Java for so many years, and they thought, well, this just gets the job done. Why do we need to change? So as a junior engineer, I had to sort of push more and explain these are the key features that I love and why it can help make our lives easier. So we did that through presentations, and then we started doing some group coding exercises so we could learn together. And then we really had to evaluate as a team that there was still like some uncomfort and some hesitancy. So we did like a training course all together. So we really prioritized our time to learn the language together and discuss it and socialize the key features that we found the most beneficial for our team specifically.
So Kotlin has added on a lot on top of Java. So these were some of the features that we socialized with our team members. We're not going to go into all of them today, but some of the bolden ones are what we started with to introduce to our teams. So one of the first features that really stood out to us was null safety. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten a null pointer exception. Anyone? Yeah. So research done by Overops shows that null pointer exception is the most common exception in apps today. And it's actually referred to as the billion-dollar mistake. So the null pointer exception has cost the industry billions of dollars, and Kotlin does a great job at fixing that problem. So let's jump into the code. We have variable a defined as ABC up here, and you'll see that the string does not have a question mark next to it. That means that the variable is not nullable. So if we try to assign it to null, it will be a compilation error instead of a runtime error. If we do want to define a variable as nullable, we can with the question mark below, and setting it to null will be fine. So this is something on the left that we used to see in a lot of our Java services before we started using Kotlin. We would have a lot of nested if statements, checking if something was null, continuing on, mutating, doing something different. And then if not, if it was null, we would just return null. On the right, you'll see Kotlin shows this in a much more fluent way with just the question mark chaining. It will only continue if the previous thing is not null, and then if it is, it will just return null. We started using this mostly when we were integrating Kotlin into our existing Java projects because we already had null values there. But as we move to more and more pure Kotlin projects, we're trying to remove nulls altogether.
So now that you've socialized the idea a bit with your team and talked about your favorite features, you then have to create sort of a proof of concept to convince them even more and show that this language is especially good for your team specifically. So what we started with is data classes. This is a common data class that you'll find in Java. It's just a pojo with a variable. You have your getters and setters. You have your toString, hash code, equals, copy, all of those code, all the functions you have to add in every time you change a variable, you have to change it. So we need a volunteer from the audience, someone who's never coded in Kotlin before, to raise their hand. It's nothing scary, I promise. Anyone? So, I want to ask you, how long do you think it will take for Shelby? Who's it gonna be? Someone, it's really easy, it's one question.
Just ask.
Come on.
Okay.
I volunteer.
We'll just ask. Thank you. How long do you think it will take Shelby to write this data class in Kotlin? She's gonna type it right here on stage.
One line.
No, how many seconds?
How many seconds? 10 seconds.
10 seconds? Pretty ambitious. Okay. I'm going to time her, and she's going to type as fast as she can. So I need your guys' help, though. We all need to say, uno, dos, tres. And when we say that, she's going to start typing, and I'm going to start timing. Okay, ready? Uno, dos, tres.
Done. No.
It was 8 seconds with a little blip. So that really shows how fast it is to use the Kotlin data classes. And it's like one of the key features that just saves so much time. And you don't have to worry about all the errors of typos. You copy and paste, you accidentally forget to change the name of the variable. You could have a bug. So this is one key way that Kotlin solves for conciseness and for less errors. So once you sort of had a proof of concept with these little data classes, you can also create a plan for your team. You really have to sit down and evaluate where are we at as a team, what are we comfortable with, and what do we want to accomplish. So you really have training set up if you need it, if your team's not comfortable with the language. For my team, there was some hesitancy, so we had a little bit of training. Shelby's team was able to pick it up really fast. And then once you have the training and the basic knowledge and that foundation, you can create goals. You want short-term and long-term goals of what do we want to do in Kotlin. For my team, we said we want to start with the tests. The tests are an easy way that's low risk. You can just code in Kotlin instead of Java for the tests, learn the language. And then once you're comfortable, you can start doing the data classes. Those are really simple. It's really hard to mess up on them, but it gives people more confidence. And then you can move to having a whole feature in Kotlin. And it's really nice to note that you don't have to completely refactor your whole application from Java to Kotlin. You can just build on top of what you already have. So that's a really nice way to start. And then at the end, you want to measure the impact. You want to see what difference have you made in terms of your developer productivity and the number of errors. For my team, the first feature I coded decreased the number of crashes in that area by 60% because we didn't have no pointer exceptions. So you can really see the impact that Kotlin is making to your team and your application in terms of the quality and the time that engineers spend coding.
So now that you've defined what success looks like and experimented with different proofs of concepts, we still need something to strengthen our argument and convince more people. So Katie, how do you persuade an engineer?
Data.
So we can't argue with data, and on the Kotlin website it states that rough estimates indicate approximately a 40% cut in the number of lines of code. So if that doesn't convince you, more concise code takes less time to write, and more importantly, less time to read. So this improves your productivity and lets you get things done faster. So here are some examples of how Kotlin removes boilerplate code. We have a bunch of different things, but some called out here. Type inference at the top. We have eval country. We don't need to define it explicitly with the type string, as a lot of other languages have as well. We have single expression functions. So instead of having fun conference with brackets and return Lambda World, we can just set it equal to Lambda World. So that's where your code can really look a lot more like mathematical equations and simplify with no return type. There's also string interpolation, which is really helpful. You can have expressions or variables within your strings. Cleans up your code a lot. There's no new keyword when defining new objects, and there's no semicolons.
So some more data for you guys. These are all the companies right now using Kotlin in production. They're some of the top tech companies, and it shows how the industry is starting to adopt Kotlin as a language. It was also ranked in the Stack Overflow 2019 survey, the 4th most loved language. So you can see through this information that it's growing in the industry and it's getting more buzz.
So even with sharing data and facts, there's going to be some myths and assumptions that come up. So it's important to deconstruct those myths so you don't have false information spreading around when you're introducing a new technology. It really helped us to formalize our thoughts by writing a technical white paper. So this started as an internal document that we used to try and convince the engineers around us that if we used Kotlin, it would decrease defects in production and increase our productivity. You can scan that QR code if you want right there, because we made an external version of the paper, because once we found the value and the feedback we were getting inside our company, we thought we could help share it across other companies so they could use it to convince their company to start using Kotlin. This was also a place where we deconstructed all of the myths and we learned how to write a white paper. So if any of you are introducing a new technology, this is a really good exercise you can do to try and pick out all of the best parts of your technology.
So another preconceived idea is that Kotlin can only be used for Android applications. However, that's not the case. We also have Java interoperability, where you can compile your Kotlin bytecode into Java bytecode. So in the end, your Kotlin and your Java code can run together, and you just have the Kotlin runtime added in your POM or your Gradle file. And then you can have your Kotlin code calling your Java code, and it all flows well.
So Java and Kotlin work really well together, but when we were writing our white paper, we needed to know that we had all the tooling support that we already had in Java, because with a big company, we don't want to spend a lot of time and effort having more tools to support a new language. It's a much easier argument if our existing tools will support the language. So we went through and looked at our build tools, our unit test coverage, our perf tests, our integration tests, our CI/CD pipeline, and more, and just made sure that we could have the same support in Kotlin as we did Java.
So what really can you use Kotlin for? You can use it for anything that runs on the JVM, any application. You can use it for Android. It's really popular in Android. You can even use it for Kotlin JavaScript, and you can use it for Kotlin native, so you can write iOS applications even in Kotlin.
So you can use Kotlin for a ton of different things, but how easy is it to learn? I wanted to just share the story of my team. When I told you I did that proof of concept to introduce it to my team, I was going to write the feature in Java in about 3 days, and I learned Kotlin, added it to our Maven POM, and then developed the feature in the same amount of time. So it was super easy to pick up as a new engineer who already knew Java. So it's easy to learn, but as we said before, we found it an easy way to introduce functional programming to teams. So one way Kotlin encourages immutability is expressions, not statements. So there's multiple ways that Kotlin does this, but one example is a when expression. So this is similar to a switch statement if you're familiar with Java. But in this case, we have a function foo where a param comes in, and when the param is 1, it will return the string 1, 2, the string 2, and then 3, we're not sure. And so since we define the return type as string in the function, if we change any of those 1, 2, or I don't know, to some other type, it will be a compilation error instead of a runtime error. This also encourages you to not mutate variables along the way. In addition to the when expression, instead of if statements, like in Java, we have if expressions. So same idea, you can set it to a variable, you can return it right away, and more. You can also define variables as immutable with val. As you see at the top, you can't reassign it. And then you can also use var if you want to be able to reassign it later.
So we also have immutable lists. So you have to explicitly say, I want to create a mutable list if you want a mutable variable. However, the list of the top one is an immutable list. You can't change the contents inside of it.
So when you write mutable list of, you have to explicitly type out mutable list of. So this kind of teaches engineers, they think about what they're writing, and we try to stay away from mutation as much as possible.
So on top of mutability, there's also Lambda support inside of Kotlin, where the functions are first-class functions. And then there's also the extension functions on top of the already built Kotlin collections. So the Kotlin collections are built on top of the Java collections, but they also have functions like map, filter, fold, flat map, all the functions we love.
So we're going to jump into some of them here and just show you what it looks like in Java versus Kotlin. So this is map. You'll see on the left we need to do .stream and then in the beginning, and then .map, and then .collect at the end. In Kotlin on the right, all you have to do is .map. And we have this nice keyword it, so we don't have to define the variable num. We can just use the keyword for simple cases like this one. Filter is very similar. You can just call .filter directly with the it keyword. You don't need to have that .stream and .collect like on the left. Lastly, flat map. So this one, you can just tell on the right, same way. It's a lot simpler than the left. On the left, we have to do .stream, .flatmap, .map, .collect, and it gets to be really long. And then on the right, we can just flat map directly.
So at this point, we've gone through, we've socialized the idea, created a proof of concept, really talked to our team and understood the comfort level, and then deconstructed the myths, the preconceived notions that people have. But there might be still some engineers that are a little hesitant, but you can't stop. You have to, can't stop, won't stop, get through the haters. My team, surprisingly, was a little hesitant at first. And the other day, I was lucky to have one of the engineers come up to me and say how appreciative he was to have me really persuade the team to use Kotlin and how much it's helped the team and how all the new code they're writing is completely in Kotlin and how lucky he was to have people like us really push for an idea we believed in. So we wanted to also get bigger than just our teams. We wanted to expand to all of the engineers within Intuit. So we created a learning community that meets once a week for an hour, and we talk about different features we love. We go through presentations. We do some live coding, refactoring some Java code into Kotlin. We'll go through some code reviews of any code we worked on for our teams. And we've also gone through Kotlin in action, going through the book to go through the different chapters and see the best practices in the Kotlin language. It's really helped to create a community of people that love the language and people that want to learn the language, and an environment for people to share their expertise.
So while we're in the learning community, one thing we've been doing is encouraging open contribution within Intuit. So that's when an engineer from a different team contributes to my team, to an internal tool, on a project they don't normally work on a tech stack they might not normally work on either. And this has been a great opportunity for engineers to learn from each other. And my team marks tasks with help wanted or open contribution tags so that other people can easily see what they can get started on, just like in open source. And this really benefits all parties involved because my team gets a lot of work done. Other people get excited to work on a new tech stack, especially if their team is not currently using Kotlin. And overall, it just empowers the engineer as the customer, to be able to contribute to something. And it's really productive long term.
So once we created the community inside of Intuit, we wanted to get even bigger and go global and meet everyone in the world that loves Kotlin and functional programming. So we found that Twitter and Slack is really helpful, a way to meet different people, see different ideas, and then also a way for us to share our resources and our projects we worked on. And one of those projects was an open source library I was able to write called Truffle Shuffle. It's an Android UI component written completely in Kotlin with functional programming. And it was a cool way to share with people and get people in the community excited about the code.
So attending and submitting to speak at conferences has also been really helpful to us. That's why we're here today. In 2018, when we first started using Kotlin, we attended Google I/O, and that was where we got to meet Andre, the lead language designer of Kotlin. And that was a pivotal moment for us because we really got to talk to him and ask him advice about introducing Kotlin to our Java projects and just at a large company in general. So I would encourage everyone to kind of attend meetups, conferences, any events you can on a new technology that you're learning. Also, KotlinConf last year, I met Hadi from JetBrains and got to be a guest on his Talking Kotlin podcast. everyone should check that out too. It has some awesome content on there. But that part of being on the podcast was what showed us that we should make an external version of the white paper, that we should meet more people in the community, that we should work with Arrow more, things like that. So all these places that we talked about here are great to connect with the larger community. So I mentioned Arrow. Arrow is a functional companion to Kotlin Standard Library. We started using Arrow on my team once everyone was comfortable with Kotlin. And we just wanted to call out the awesome work being done to make contributing to Arrow a great experience for everyone. We're trying to do that inside Intuit as well. So here is the link again to the white paper that we talked about and a Medium article talking about our journey introducing Kotlin and functional programming to Intuit. We also have a webinar that we did with some other awesome engineers at Intuit talking about where else we have Kotlin in production right now. And then Kotlin in Action and Kotlin Cohen's exercises were a great first place to start. And you can see us next. We're talking at KotlinConf in Copenhagen in December, so we hope to see you there.
So we've walked you through the 8 key techniques that we use to influence change at a 30-year-old company with over 9,000 employees, and how you can do the same with any technology. We want it to be Kotlin or functional programming, but it could be anything, through finding your passion, socializing the idea, creating a proof of concept, creating a plan with your team, persuading with data, deconstructing the myths and the preconceived ideas, not stopping, getting through the haters, and then connecting with the larger community. And it shows that it can only take 2 people to start a movement.
Thank you.
Thank you.